adjust him on a target, and then let him know that he's on it, and then he confirms it. Next up, we have situational awareness. The gunner, being in his gun sight all the time, like I said, does not have the same awareness that the pilot does. The pilot can tell the gunner to come off scope. This is the basic brevity, get the gunner to come out of the gun sight view and look around. He may tell him to come off scope to talk about the broader picture, to orient the gunner better, etc. Due to the way that gun cannot pitch up very high, if you're in a steep bank to the left or right, as helos are prone to do, you won't be able to see anything but the ground rushing by very quickly. When this happens, it's a good idea for the gunner to come off scope and maintain situational awareness. If the pilot tells gunner to come off scope, he'll basically be telling him that one good example of this was we had a scenario where I had a new gunner. I was the pilot. We had a very large, visible, from my point of view, terrain feature. That terrain feature was a giant field that was differently colored than the others. If you're in any kind of zoom, you would not notice it. However, if you were out of zoom, you're looking around the cockpit normally, it's very obvious. So in that case, I told him to come off scope, find the light field on the east, on the right side of that. There's your target. Some little tips for the gunner. If you're flying around and the gun sight's tilted right, you're in a right-hand turn. If it's left, it's a left-hand turn. When you see a tilt develop and sustain for a period of time, expect to be hitting your traverse limit very soon. So start compensating for that in advance. At all times during flight, especially during any engagements, the pilot will describe what he's doing to the gunner. This allows the gunner to know what he's doing and not make a bad shot. If the pilot starts to break right, you don't want to make a toe shot because you won't be able to follow it. There is no real formal method for this. Just be descriptive. Say something that your gunner will understand. For example, gunner coming off left, we're circling around, we're extending, we'll come in from the east for this next run. Prep your toe. Something like that. Go ahead and dismount for a second, over. Okay, we're going to talk about brevity phrases. To explain what I said earlier, the key thing in this is you need to say something that other crew members can understand. We're giving you a basis to work from. You don't have to follow these exactly, so long as your other crew member knows what's going on. As you're doing this, go ahead and coach, while you're in your aircraft, we're doing the little drills and stuff. Coach your fellow crew member as to whether what he's saying is good, bad, or you don't understand it. Come to some kind of understanding within each other for the best comms. All right, brevity phrases. The first one is steady. This can be said either by the gunner or the pilot. If it's said by the gunner, it's the gunner requesting a steady bearing to make a shot. If it's said by the pilot, it's the pilot is indicating that he's on a steady bearing, and the gunner can take advantage of that. Like I said earlier, we have weapon systems they have constraints how they can fire. The tow missile has a very narrow window to the front that it can engage. The cannon can traverse right, left, but it can't shoot to behind the aircraft. If the gunner gets into a situation where he's hit his left traverse, he needs the aircraft to rotate left, it's very simple. He just says that, rotate left, and the pilot will start turning. Then the gunner can stay steady to let him know that he's reached that. He can now engage from there. The pilot can also indicate this to the gunner to let him know that he is rotating, left or right or whatever. When you're in low altitude flight, you're sneaking around because there's some kind of anti-air threat somewhere. When you pop up to make an engagement, again, it's very simple. You say popping up, pop up, dropping down, drop down. That'll let the gunner know when his window of engagement is going to come up. An alternate way to phrase that is mask and unmask. If you mask, you're behind some kind of terrain feature. They can't engage you directly. If you unmask, you're able to make a shot. The gunner can indicate to the pilot what he's doing, like if he's engaging something, he can say engaging, he can say firing. If it's a missile, he can say that he launched it or missile away. Whatever, just to let the pilot know what's going on. The pilot, since he's in control of these engagements, will give them clearance to fire. Simple commands, fire, engage, etc. If doing any kind of attack that requires the aircraft to fly towards a target, the pilot can say that he's running in. This will let the gunner know that they're about to go into a hotter area and to start scanning front. Particularly when the gunner is firing, the pilot can can inform the gunner that he'll be braking left or right. This way, like I said, there's traverse limits. If a pilot brakes unannounced, does a hard brake left, and the gunner's firing, it's possible that his gun will hit the traverse and he'll be firing while you're turning, which means his rounds will be going somewhere he was not intending them to. If there's friendlies in the area with close support, this is very, very bad. As I said previously, we have the come off scope stuff. We can also have the gunner tell the pilot to check scope. If the pilot's observing through the gunner's sight, he needs to adjust him. You can tell him come left, right, up, down, any variation of that. If the gunner sees something and he wants the pilot to confirm that he's on the right target, he can simply say confirm scope. And the pilot tells him, scope confirmed, or you're on target, or similar. So those are the basic brevity. It's up to you as a crew to find what works for you. It's not intended to be rigid. It's just to give you some kind of baseline and some expectations as to what's possible to say. Does anyone have any questions about brevity? Okay, stand by. Go ahead and get back to your aircraft. Okay, we're now moving to the equipment, weapons, and employment section of the lecture. The first thing we're going to go over are the items that are available to both the pilot and the gunner, or should be available to both the pilot and the gunner. First of these items is the radar warning receiver. You may have seen this before, you may not. The radar warning receiver is a little GUI element that will show up in, I believe, the bottom right of your screen. A radar warning receiver will pick up things like the Tunguska and the Shoka, which use radar to guide their munitions. If one of these vehicles is in the area, you'll see it. The radar warning receiver will pop up. You'll hear a beep every so often that indicates the presence of a radar. It doesn't quite work like the real one. If you're used to DCS's RWR, it's not going to be quite like that. It will also be some indication of being engaged. Usually you'll hear like a sharp buzzing tone. Since this is radar, and the only countermeasures this aircraft has are flares, you can pop flares, but probably not going to do much. Best course of action if you hear that tone is to get down behind something, make a sharp turn. I'm going to demonstrate the RWR by placing out some kind of vehicle, and then I'll describe what the radar codes are and what they mean. You guys see it pop up?
Yeah.
Can someone state what it says on that icon?
It says 23 on the green square icon.
Okay, these codes are actually real codes. There's a bunch of them. The ones that matter to us are 23 and S6, Sierra 6. 23 means there's a Shoka. So there's a Shoka nearby, its radar's on, and you can see it. Now I'm going to try and put down a Tunguska. Give me a second. Okay, do you see it now?
Yeah.
S6. Correct. So a Sierra 6 is a Tunguska, a 23 is a Shoka. You probably want to write that down. This is important to know because a Tunguska will fuck your world up because it has missiles, whereas a Shoka will just kind of fuck your world up because it has cannons. I couldn't tell you what the ranges are. They're probably between 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers right now. One thing to keep in mind, if you have a radar contact, or rather, if you do not have a radar contact, but you're taking some kind of cannon fire, assume that's a BMP or similar, vehicle, because they will engage air threats. Okay, do you guys see, you understand the radar warning receiver? Can I delete these